the Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the WC podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, our newest Chancellor of Higher Education for the state of Nevada, the Nevada System of Higher Education, my friend, Dale Erquiaga. Dale, welcome.
Thanks, Emmy. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here on the podcast. I know we've had already a series of meetings with you for business, with our partners at the chambers, and I really believe you're going to leave us just with another significant, contribution. We're going to talk today about the many you have already here for our state. So Dale, first, congratulations on the role. I know it's an acting chancellor. I'm assuming that you have hit the ground running because I know you. But tell us a little bit about how these first few weeks have been in this role for you.
I'm happy to do so, and thanks again for having me. So for your listeners and viewers, a little background on the job. The Chancellor of the Higher Education System reports to an elected Board of Regents. So I have 13 bosses who you, the voters, elected. They represent districts across the state. And I was appointed acting chancellor at the board's June meeting, and I started this job on July 1st. So I'm in almost 2 months at this point. I think that probably the easiest way to describe this job, the chancellor serves as CEO of the system. I coordinate policy for an elected board through 8 institutional presidents. So if you think about UNLV, College of Southern Nevada, Nevada State College, UNR, all of our institutions, each has a president who runs that entity. So my job is somewhere in between. I support the presidents and I implement on behalf of the board. The board is head of system. My job is to coordinate. And so really the first part of my job has been to get to understand that system. I'm new to higher education. I spent several years in the K-12 system and many years in state government. But higher education is a little different posting for me. So I'm learning all the acronyms and learning all about our institutions. For your listeners and viewers, there are about 105,000 students in our state served by our colleges and universities. And we have about 15,000 employees in the Nevada System of Higher Education. So it's a pretty large operation. Part of the job so far has been learning all of those inner workings of the system. But I think most importantly, the board will soon approve a budgetary request, which will be submitted to Governor Sisolak for his review. And that really has been consuming the most of my time as I get ready for a legislative session. NSHE and its institutions, like most Nevada families, suffered budget cuts during the pandemic. And our monies have not been able to be restored. And we're very hopeful as we get ready for the next legislative session that we'll be able to demonstrate why investing in students, those 105,000 students, is really critical for the workforce and economic development future of our state. So that's what's kept me busy so far.
Yeah, justifiably so. I think you have still that legislative session that comes ahead. You're going to get to apply your lengthy experience in legislative sessions on behalf of our system of higher education. And in the little time that we've had to update you since we've worked together in your previous roles, I shared how we've partnered with our chambers of commerce, also with our regional development agency, which is the LVGA, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, and really starting, if you will, from the demand side. So we've updated our workforce blueprint, which highlights our 7 target industry sectors for our region here for Southern Nevada. And we've also started to launch industry sector partnerships for the very first time. Right. I know that you know this. We have really, for the first time regionally, along with some of the presidents of the higher ed institutions here who sit on our board, Dr. Zaragoza, Dr. Jara, Dr. Poller, and also Dr. Whitfield. So I included Dr. Jara there from CCSD or Clark County School District. We are working together to make sure that this talent pipeline that starts in the K-12 system, as you said, and goes all the way through the post-secondary system to higher education, that it's aligned to the needs of businesses. And so how important is it to you from your perspective that everything we do, everything we build at the university level, the community colleges, but more even importantly, the K-12 system, that it's built to really the needs of an evolving economy, and it's built to the specs of what employers need and want.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you and your team for the work that you've done. I think it's been almost 10 years since you and I started having these conversations, certainly a good 7 or 8 years. And it's nice to see how far you've come in serving business. And I think that the Nevada system of higher education is in a very similar role. We contribute to the state's economy by supporting businesses, whether that's through our research, things that businesses might commercialize or might need for their own future growth. We have tremendous research institutions in this state, or it's the development of that talent pipeline to provide the workers that our businesses need. So we really are part of the economic apparatus of our state to ensure that as we go through these ups and downs of recessions, I have lived through more than I care to count at my age, and our state is always the first in and the last out of an economic downturn. And so turning to business as you have, and I think that the way that NSHE does through all of our colleges and universities is really important. We are a part of the economic system here, and I think sometimes people forget that. We think about what college was maybe when we went. I have a liberal arts degree. I studied political science and journalism and French. I don't use a lot of French today, but the grounding of that education set me up for a career in both government and business. But I think we often overlook those really close connections as a talent pipeline for business. And then, of course, probably most important, as we serve those businesses, we are the pathway to economic mobility for Nevadans. I grew up poor. My family were farmers and housewives, immigrants to this country, and I got a college degree through the Nevada system of higher education. And today I lead that system. That's what's supposed to happen, in my view, in terms of economic mobility for our students, whether they're right out of high school or they're coming in as what we call a non-traditional student, someone over the age of 24. So those two things just have to go together. Economic mobility for students and being a part of the economic answers that our businesses need here.
Dale, again, you've had multiple positions in government over the year.
It's a nice way of saying I'm very old.
Multiple governors. And, again, you've contributed at different levels. When I met you, I didn't know another guy that had my same title. You were the Chief Strategy Officer for the governor. I was the Chief Strategy Officer here at Workforce Connections. And we met in D.C. after I had heard about you already, but you were focused on workforce at that time. And since then, we've had many, much dialogue and much work we've accomplished trying to move the needle here in that regard. But again, even on your own, whether it be in those different administrations, whether it be in the K through 12 space as the superintendent, you have many accomplishments. Is there one or two that you're especially proud of in those years, legislation, policy, law, or that you can share with us? And the follow-up question would be, after you share those accomplishments, what motivates you? What motivates Dale Erquiaga to keep going and reach those accomplishments?
Yeah, well, thank you for terming them accomplishments. Sometimes I think I'm just old. I may be Nevada's most renewable resource. I've had so many public jobs. I have been in and out of public life for 37 years. And I'll start with this job. I am the only person in Nevada history to be both superintendent of public instruction to run the K-12 system and acting chancellor or chancellor of the system of higher education. And so for me, again, a farm kid who came from Fallon, whose parents did not speak English as children, that for me is something that makes me very proud of my state, that my state will invest in a native son in that way. I'm very honored to have this job, even for the short time that I will serve as acting chancellor. But if I think back over that career, 30 years ago, I was the Deputy Secretary of State for Elections. And in 1992, Nevada experienced a very troubled election. We had a recount of a United States Senate race. We had ballot access issues. We had petition law that was frankly outdated. It had been written during the progressive era in the 19-teens of the last century. And it was really challenging. I worked for Secretary of State Cheryl Lau at that time, and we responded to that challenging election. I was in court for the first time in my life testifying as a bureaucrat about election law, and we responded and went to the legislature with a reform package about ballot access and voter integrity. And as I sit back now at this point in my life and listen to America go through that conversation again, 30 years later, I'm proud of that work. Clearly, folks still have concerns, and I think it's healthy to have those debates. I also trust my elected and election officials, both. And so having been on their side, I know how hard it is to administer an election. And I'm very proud of the work that we did in 92. And then I guess the second thing I would say, when I worked for Governor Sandoval, when I was the state superintendent of public instruction, we created what the budget nerds would call categorical budget programs. And we added funding for types of students. So Zoom schools were for English language learners. A program called Victory Schools was for students who lived at some level of poverty. We added money for career and technical education and for special education. And I think the work in special education and in the Victory Schools, children in poverty, are things that I will always be very proud of. Populations that are often left out, don't have advocates. I had someone say to me the other day, actually a student at one of our campuses reminded me that I had helped his family when I was superintendent with special education challenges. And I have met young people who went to a Victory School who received additional resources because of those monies. And I think those things, if I have to point to something, I'd point there, which is my way of answering your question about what motivates me. As I've said, I'm very fortunate. I have led a blessed life to have all the jobs I've had. And I also believe that's what's supposed to happen in America. You're supposed to be able to reach for whatever job you want and get there on an equal or at least equitable footing with others, no matter the color of your skin or your ethnicity or the zip code that you grew up in. And that ability, which was given to me, my parents taught us how to use today what we would call social capital. My parents didn't have that word. We called it networking at best. But my parents knew that I needed to get out. I needed to get off the farm. I needed to go to, in my case, political dinners because I was interested in political science. That motivates me. I often say I will stand in classrooms of elementary schools, or now I stand on college campuses, and I look around and think, who will be me? Who here will get what I was able to receive from this state as really what I consider a benefit that my state has invested in me. And that drives me because sometimes I think young people aren't going to get what I got. Our system feels to many of them to be wired against their opportunities. And that's really what I want for all of the 105,000 students who are in my care in this job today. I want them to have the opportunity that I had.
Dale, I'll throw one more in there because in an era today where there's not a lot of collaboration across the aisle, there was also a legislative session in Nevada where you guys passed the most significant K through 12 education reform and investment, and that was a time again where it could have easily just been, again, where the two sides, if you will, decide not to work together, but instead the opposite happened. And so to me, that's one of the legacies of the Sandoval administration when you were there, to be able to, again, work across the aisle and really create significant investment and reform for these kids.
Thank you. I always say I was trained that way. I was trained by great legislators in Nevada history, great elected officials. And I was trained that it was my job to be a public steward, to shepherd resources, financial resources wisely, but also to get work done. And so it breaks my heart when I watch the news today and the job seems to be burn the house down and just stand on my island and throw rocks at you. Like, I was not trained that way. I was trained to find an answer that we could all come together and agree on. And so I find it hard to engage in many public discourses today because that's not the goal. The goal today is very different. It's much more politicized than it was. So I'm fortunate that I was trained by great leaders, and I have worked for some really fine Nevadans who expected me to get things done, and I appreciated that.
And Dale, I know you were talking about your heritage earlier. One of my earlier memories with you, because we've had memorable meals, in D.C. over Ethiopian food, and but I remember you took me to a couple of vast restaurants when I was in Reno. One was Louis, and the other one was another place that I don't remember the name, but I know there was a bunch of sausages in a refrigerator, and you could buy some to take home. But so you've always been proud of your heritage and shared it whenever possible. I know that for a fact. Here, as we return to the new normal and can meet again with people and go to restaurants and whatnot, I wonder how you feel the higher education system for a long time was functioning, if you will, virtually, where kids young adults were attending their classes from home via a computer. There seems to be some movement back to the classes, but do you think that it will be forever now some kind of a hybrid, a new normal, or do you think we will make it back to the way it was pre-pandemic?
I think that higher education, not just here in Nevada, but everywhere, I think we don't have a choice. I think our customer, students, expect both modalities, if you'll allow me to use that word. They are going to want to take courses online, and they're going to want that in-person experience. For many, part of going to college or university is about the dorm experience and being in a lecture hall. And for others, they learn better online and they wish to be able to choose that way. So I really have to give Nevada's colleges and universities credit for the way they pivoted during the pandemic. We were not a system that had deep use of digital learning. And all of a sudden, they had to do it. And they did. And they did it well. And I also recognize that for many faculty, they want their students back with them. And many students want that experience. I do believe, though, that our customer in the future is going to expect both. We have great success with Great Basin College, which is the original community college in Nevada. It was in Elko County, founded in the early 1960s, and they do much of their coursework online because they are remote, and they serve rural counties where it's sometimes 2-3 hours to drive to a campus, and that's not practical. If one lives on a ranch, for example, you're not going to be able to drive in for a night class. And so they've really done, I think, the leading work in online. But all of our institutions offer it. Sometimes it's for high school students. Sometimes it's for traditional or non-traditional older students. And I think it's here to stay. I think we will always have both.
Dill, as Southern Nevada's local workforce development board, our, if you will, mantra is people, partnerships, and possibilities. And so I know for you, you've made it very clear already that your work at NSHE is going to be about partnership. And you've already reached out. Again, we've met with the chambers and the LVGEA. What are some ways that you already envision how NSHE and your partners here in this region, including Workforce Connections, can work together to, again, nurture a talent pipeline that meets the needs of businesses over the next few years and decade?
So I think there are probably two things that I would talk about. In the way that you have led the path here in Southern Nevada with co-location and working with the Department of Employment, Training, Rehabilitation, working with your chambers of commerce, sort of that one-stop shop at the conference that you and I attended all those years ago in DC, that is natural for serving your customer. I think we should partner on those kinds of possibilities between institutions of higher education and your delivery. Our customer doesn't care. Most of it is public money. It's either federal dollars or it's a state appropriation, and they don't care where that bucket of money came from. And so shame on us if we care too much about, well, this is my piece of the pie and that is your piece of the pie. I mean, so I think that's a partnership that we could be more co-located or more seamless in. Things like many places are piloting where you can earn credit at your programs for my degrees in my institutions. And so I think those kinds of partnerships would be beneficial to the end user, that person who is interested in getting a certificate or building towards a degree. Again, they don't care where the money came from or whose building they're sitting in or whose computer they're dialing into. That tells you how old I am, I guess, if I talk about dialing in on a computer. We don't do that anymore. We should be able to deliver that in a seamless way. I think that's first. And then second, you know this about me, I'm a bit of a data nerd. I like to make evidence-based decisions. I always joke that I didn't always make evidence-based decisions in my very long career. Sometimes I guessed. I was asked a question by a secretary of state or a governor or a legislator, and I had to guess what I thought the right answer was. And today we have such ability to build evidence and analyze data. And I'd love to work with your folks and your customers in that regard. I don't want to guess what they need from us. I want to ask them. We have, and within the Nevada system of higher education, a number of research centers and research programs and colleges who that is what they do. They do public opinion research or they do data evaluations and research. I want us to be the sort of evaluation and do the math side of things. And you hold many of the customers or clients to whom I think we should put some questions and then ask how their system should be built, because it's their system. It's not mine. I'm here for a very temporary basis. It's not yours. You're here for a lot longer than I, but it's theirs. And so, golly, we should go ask them how they'd like it to be run, I think. So I think research and that co-location seamlessness would be a great place to start for us.
Well, count us in, Dale. Check on those two things. You know that we're committed to partnering with you while you're at the helm at NSHE to make things better. One of the things I've learned working with you is that it's always about the people we serve. I remember, I'll have to give the clean version, but it was like, we bureaucrats should always, make it about the people, and that's it, And so I agree with you. I think everything we do should be on how do we make the services more accessible? How do we factor in for, again, we all come from different places. We might speak different languages. We have different, if you will, upbringings. And now, as we were talking the other day too, there is these other elements of trauma that have come with just these past 2 years that we have to factor in for the people we're trying to reach and serve. So in the final section of our podcast, Dill, we always reserve a moment for final thoughts for you. And also sometimes people have a survey or a new program, and we put it on the bottom of the screen if there's a link to something. But if there's something I, again, know it's going to happen during your tenure with NSHE, as you just said, is transparency. If somebody wants to work with NSHE, they just got to reach out. And I know what would be the best way, as you say, share your final thoughts for people, a partner, whoever that might be, a community partner. How do they connect with NSHE?
Sure. So I guess I want to say two things as my final thoughts. I was twos and threes, never singles. So first of all, you can email me at chancellor@nshe.nevada.edu. That way you don't have to try and spell my last name. So feel free. If I don't know the answer, I'll find the person who does. But I also want to say, remember, I work for an elected board. The Board of Regents governs this system, and they have begun an examination, both of the roles and responsibilities of the chancellor. What did they expect from their next hire when I am done being acting chancellor? That will be a public process. There will be meetings about what does the board expect and what do our stakeholders expect from their chancellor. And then the board will launch a search of some kind, probably in early 2023. And I hope people will engage with that. You mentioned trauma. Our board has pressed us already for answers to mental health challenges for our faculty, staff, and students. So I think we're going to talk about that more as we get ready for the legislative session. And I just can't stress that enough. These folks are your elected officials, and they are all on our website. They all have email, just like mine, and they will be leading this process both to find a permanent chancellor and to steer the system through the legislative session, and then to implement as we enter this academic year and we prepare for those future academic years. So we are online, we all have email, and I encourage people, don't just complain about what you've heard about my bosses or what you've heard about prior chancellors or what experience you had 10 years ago at one of our institutions. Email us, come to a public meeting. This is a public body. And I think you will find that this board takes its role very seriously as public servants. And certainly I can tell you that the staff does as well. So I look forward to that kind of engagement.
And again, knowing you, Del, I can share with our listeners and our viewers that if they email you're going to answer. Yep. So we're going to make sure we put that information here on the screen as we say our goodbyes. Thank you, my friend, for I'm glad you're not done giving to our state yet. You keep giving. So I appreciate that we have another opportunity to work together.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you very much. Here. Thank you, Del. And that's it for another episode of the WC Podcast. We hope you join us at another one. Until then, stay safe. Okay, Dale. Well, thank you for staying over for our bonus segment called Against the Wall.
Okay.
We have 3 segments in this game. Are you ready for the first one?
You bet.
It's called Your Favorite. So I'm going to give you a category, and you're going to give me your favorite thing in that category. So we're going to start. Your favorite subject in college?
History.
Your favorite book?
Anything by Gore Vidal.
Your favorite movie?
Out of Africa.
Favorite city to visit?
San Sebastian or Donostia, Spain.
Lovely. Favorite food?
Ice cream.
Favorite artist or musical group?
Oh, so here I don't listen to a lot of music. So I'm just going to cop out and say anything the Broadway show tune in it.
Ooh, love that. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
And this one you have to be careful. Favorite sports team?
Oh, boy. Pass.
Okay. The second segment is called Tough Choices. I'm going to give you 2 choices. You're going to pick one. Are you ready?
Sure.
Would you rather vacation in the U.S. or abroad?
Yes.
Would you rather play sports or watch sports?
Watch sports.
Are you a basketball or a football guy?
Basketball.
Would you rather on a Sunday sleep in or wake up to have a hearty breakfast?
Sleep in.
Me too. Would you rather owe money or owe a favor?
Owe money.
Here's a tough one. Be ready. Justice or grace?
Oof. In honor of my mother, Grace.
And here is my favorite. Actions or words?
Actions.
Very good. You made it with flying colors to the second segment. Now the final one is called Finish the Sentence. So I'm going to give you 95% of a sentence and you're going to finish it for me. Are you ready?
I guess.
Here we go. The final stretch. If Dale could live anywhere, it would be...
Close to my grandchildren.
Dale's favorite thing about his job is...
Meeting with students.
If Dale could travel back in time, he would travel to...
The 1940s.
The best part of living in Nevada is...
My family all lives here.
3 words that describe Dale are...
Nerdy, funny, and an introvert.
I couldn't agree more. Final question, Dale. Doing the WC podcast here with us today was...
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dale, for staying over and doing this bonus segment.
Thanks. That was fun.